Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kay Jacobson. I'm a librarian with the Ramsey County Libraries, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar featuring some of the founders from SOS, which is Save Our Signs. But first, let me give a brief shout out to our co-sponsor, Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of Minnesota. They are a great um, organization, which, if you don't belong, talking to my library patrons out there, something worth considering. They're part of what makes this programming possible. The other half that makes it possible is the Ramsey County Libraries with their financial support, and we are grateful to both organizations for making this happen. So, let's see, what else do I have to say? Well, a few words about SOS. I learned about them at the end of last year. They are a community collaboration co-founded by a group of librarians, public historians, and data experts in partnership with the Data Rescue Project and Safeguarding Research and Culture. So we have with us today Jenny McBurney, who's a government publications librarian at the University of Minnesota, Molly Blake, who's a social sciences librarian at the University of Minnesota, and Amelia Palacio. You're going to tell me that I just slaughtered that, but that's okay. Communications specialist with Mapping Prejudice from the University of Minnesota. And if you recall, we had Mapping Prejudice with us last fall. And so I am so excited to turn this over to Jenny, Molly, and Amelia. So I'll give them a nice welcome.
Amazing. Thank you, Kay, so much for that introduction. I'm going to start sharing my screen here and kick us off. All right. Um, yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Ollie and Ramsey County's Tuesday with a Scholar for inviting us to share the Save Our Science project with you today. My name is Amelia Palacios, and I'm the communication specialist for Mapping Prejudice, and I'm here with
And I'm Jenny McBurney. I'm the government publications librarian at the University of Minnesota.
And I'm Molly Blake. I'm a social sciences librarian.
Yes. And so we, along with many other data experts, public historians, and librarians across the country, make up the Save Our Science team. And so I just want to begin this presentation with just acknowledging that the majority of us are based here in Minnesota, and things are not normal here. This is an image of a community action last week on Pade where hundreds of people organized themselves to spell out SOS, signifying how our state is in the midst of a crisis. And the federal occupation of our communities is impacting us in small or compounding ways. And so we are deeply grateful for you taking the time to be here with us this afternoon. And given this context, we ask for your grace, and we also offer it to you as well as we navigate this difficult time. So I'm going to begin with a mini history lesson. I'm going to take us back 40 years to springtime in downtown Los Angeles, in the late 1980s, and specifically the Central Library in downtown Los Angeles. On April 29th, 1986, started off as a typical Tuesday. It was quiet in the stacks until just before 11 a.m. when the fire alarms went off. Allegedly, a disgruntled wannabe actor started a fire in the stacks in the Central Library in downtown Los Angeles. The fire destroyed hundreds of thousands of books and other materials. It is the most catastrophic fire of a library building in the history of the United States. And this April will mark the 40th anniversary of this fire. So later that day, on that Tuesday, word of the fire spread around the city, with local news and radio stations sharing librarians' calls to, quote, save the books. And the next morning, the people of Los Angeles answered the librarians' calls, with close to 2,000 people showing up to rescue what remained of the collections. The story of this fire and the community's response to this fire is the subject of Susan Orlean's gripping narrative, The Library Book. And in it, she writes, Quote, "It was as if, in this urgent moment, the people of Los Angeles formed a living library. They created, for that short time, a system to protect and pass along shared knowledge, to save what we know for each other, which is what libraries do every day." So the brigade was a manifestation of the role that the library played in the community. People showed up because the library was the heart of the city. Today, we are facing another fire, not a physical arson, but one just as damaging and devastating that is targeting another heart of our country. This fire is hitting our national parks, our country's largest outdoor classroom. And once again, librarians are responding. In this moment of crisis, librarians across the country have tapped into a shared sense of purpose among Americans watching this campaign of destruction. Their Save Our Signs project is a digital bucket brigade to save interpretive materials located across our national parks that are in this line of fire. Like the Save Our Books campaign that rebuilt the Los Angeles Public Library, this effort embodies what libraries do every day, working with the communities they serve to protect and pass along shared knowledge, to ensure that knowledge is accessible for generations to come. And so, why do these interpretive signs matter? When you think of the national parks, you may think of grand vistas and scenic trails that you'd find at Yosemite or Voyageurs National Park here in Minnesota. But there are national park sites all across our country. Some are in the heart of cities like Rosie the Riveter in the Bay Area, or Stonewall in New York City, and the African American Meeting House in downtown Boston. Some are larger monuments like the Springfield Race Riot Monument in Springfield, Illinois, or Manzanar in Central California. And located in all of these sites are signs and interpretive materials that tell the history of each place. Every national park site is congressionally mandated to tell the historical significance of that particular site. With over 300 million visits a year to the national parks, these meticulously researched and crafted interpretive materials create a place-based library of public memory and scientific understanding for visitors. In fact, NPS, or the National Park Service is the nation's largest outdoor classroom. Each one of these sites around the country is full of educational opportunities and experiences. Some is self-guided, and some is through formal interpretation by park rangers, which is what's pictured here in this slide. These sites are the people's school. The National Park Service and the materials housed here help shape and construct our nation's public memory. These signs are physical representations of the years of work that historians, designers, fabricators, and community groups, like Avenging the Ancestors Coalition in Philly, have dedicated to this cause. So I'm going to pass it off to Molly Blake, who will be sharing more about the specific community groups who have advocated for nuanced interpretive materials across the parks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amelia. In the year 2002, an activist group called the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition began advocating that Independence National Historic Park in Philadelphia, which is the site where George Washington and John Adams lived before the White House became where the president lived, add an exhibit that told the stories of the 9 individuals that were enslaved by George Washington while he was living at that site during his presidency. And over several years, between 2002 and 2010, Avenging the Ancestors tirelessly campaigned to ensure that these individuals would have their stories be told. As a result of their activism and activism from others in the local community and in the historian community, in the year 2010, the National Park Service opened an exhibit entitled The President's House, Freedom and Slavery and the Making of a New Nation. This exhibit not only tells the story of the 9 individuals Washington enslaved, but it also explores the role of slavery in early U.S. history more broadly and invites visitors to grapple with a contradiction central to the founding of this country: the prevalence of the violence of slavery and a nation that was founded on the ideals of liberty. And I want to turn my attention now to another site that was also the result of some tireless activism from a very dedicated group of people. And that is the establishment of Manzanar as a National Historic Site. Sue Konatomi Embry was 19 years old when she arrived at Manzanar with her family, following Franklin Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, which called for the incarceration of Japanese Americans on the West Coast. And these individuals were incarcerated in 10 quote unquote relocation centers, often called internment camps across the country. Manzanar was the largest of these 10 camps. Rose Ochi was only 3 years old when her family was detained and eventually incarcerated in Arkansas. Starting in the late 1960s, Sue Konatomi Embry and Ochi led an organization called the Manzanar Committee. And the Manzanar Committee, starting in the year 1969, led yearly pilgrimages to Manzanar, where Japanese Americans and others could learn about what had happened there. The Manzanar Committee also advocated for this site to become a designated National Historic Site where visitors could learn about the unjust incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II. In 1992, so a full 33 years later, following decades of their advocacy, Manzanar was recognized as a National Historic Site. Today, 12 NPS sites tell the story of the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II, including the Minidoka National Historic Site and the Bainbridge Island Japanese American Exclusion Memorial. So in addition to the story of these two sites, I also want to talk a little bit about how much the National Park Service has really expanded over the past 30 or 40 years. Over the past 3 decades, numerous national park sites have been added with the goal of telling a more comprehensive and complete history of the United States. The Barack Obama administration oversaw the most robust expansion of NPS sites with no fewer than 26 new sites. These sites included the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, and the Stonewall National Monument and the Cesar Chavez National Monument. In the final weeks of his presidency, Obama announced 5 additional sites, some of which I wanted to highlight here, including 2 memorials that commemorated the horrific violence that advocates of the civil rights movement survived. One of these is the Freedom Riders National Monument in Anniston, Alabama, which commemorates where a white supremacist mob firebombed one of the Freedom Riders buses. Another is the Birmingham Civil Rights National Historic Monument, which commemorates the church where 4 young Black girls were murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in 1963. And the third of those sites was dedicated to telling the story of Reconstruction, enabling Americans to have a more complex and complete picture of U.S. history since the U.S. Civil War. So this is just a small snapshot of all the national park sites across the country. And today, all of this history is endangered, and some of it has, in fact, already disappeared. So let's take us back to the beginning of 2025, which I know might seem like a long time ago right now already to some of us. In early 2025, the Trump administration issued numerous executive orders that targeted information, specifically information that challenged the administration's ideology on issues like climate, health, race, gender, and sexuality. And these executive orders collectively had devastating and wide-ranging impacts on the accessibility and reliability of government information. On his very first day in office, President Trump signed Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. And he signed a second executive order entitled, Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. These 2 orders, along with a few others that followed, resulted in a very significant amount of information loss across all areas of government. In order to comply with these orders, staff removed research papers and data sets and even photographs from government websites ranging from the Centers for Disease Control to the Census Bureau. In addition to this information being removed, language was modified on government websites. For example, on government websites at the end for the EPA and other similar organizations, the term climate change was swapped out for the term climate resilience. And then in March of this year, this administration turned its attention towards the national parks, issuing Executive Order 14253, which is entitled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. This was Donald Trump's 107th executive order of this presidential administration. This order instructs the Secretary of the Interior, which oversees the National Park Service. The National Park Service is located in the Department of the Interior, to, quote, ensure that all public monuments, memorials, statues, markers, or similar properties within the Department of Interior's jurisdiction do not contain descriptions, depictions, or content that inappropriately disparage Americans past or living. And I want to note here that while this executive order targets all sites under the Department of Interior's jurisdiction, as well as the Smithsonian Institute, it takes specific aim at Independence National Historic Park, the park that I just told you about, where they added that exhibit in 2010 to tell the story of the 9 individuals who had been enslaved there. In particular, the administration calls for funding to, quote unquote, restore Independence National Historic Park in time for July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so this really illustrates that this administration has a special preoccupation with controlling the narrative of how we talk about the founding of the country and the role that slavery played in that founding. In May, 2 months after this executive order was released, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum issued a corresponding secretarial order 3431, which is also titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. This order provides detailed instructions to land management bureaus of the Department of the Interior on how they're actually going to implement the executive order. So if some of us were kind of hoping when we saw that executive order that maybe this is the goal that isn't actually going to be enacted, it became very clear when the secretarial order came out that the administration had a plan. Burgum reiterates the executive order's instructions to reinstate any signage that had been changed since 2020 because of quote unquote improper partisan ideology. And it also asked for help in determining if signs contain quote unquote inappropriate content. Burgum gave a deadline of 120 days for people to report this inappropriate conduct, which we calculated to be September 17th of 2025. And I want to highlight that in asking people to report inappropriate content, the secretarial order even explicitly called for public participation in government censorship. It directed each borough to post signs that contain a QR code, and you can see a photograph of that QR code on the slide here. And these QR codes asked visitors to report, quote, any signs or other information that are negative about either past or living Americans, or that fail to emphasize the beauty, grandeur, and abundance of landscapes and other natural features. So as librarians and public historians, we were extremely alarmed to hear about Secretarial Order 3431. The original executive order, as I mentioned, had been vague enough that it raised questions about how this would be implemented. But once the secretarial order came out, the issue became urgent and we knew we had to act. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jenny McBurney, to talk a little bit about what we did.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about our SOS origin story. So as Molly described, kind of starting at the end of January, government information and data was just disappearing and changing, and efforts to resist this censorship of government information began right away. One important effort is the Data Rescue Project, which launched in early February. The DRP is a group of librarians and data experts from all over the country. They've been doing really amazing work to preserve public data before it can be removed. But as we know, as time goes on, websites and information continue to disappear. More damaging executive orders, like the one that Molly told us about, Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, continue to come out. And then in April, Molly and I, along with some librarian colleagues in Illinois and in California, we started a project called Tracking GovInfo to try to help both librarians and the public understand the scope of what government information and websites had been removed or modified, and then try to point to where that information is preserved whenever possible. And so if you'd like to learn more about that project, You can visit our website. I've got the URL on the slide there, but it's z.umn.edu/trackgovinfo and that kind of has a list of all of the materials that we've been able to track so far that have been removed or modified by the federal government. Then in May, as Molly told us just a moment ago, that's when the secretarial order came out that was going to operationalize the plan to censor national park signs. And so this is really when government documents librarians began discussing this problem of national park signs and how we might be able to preserve their information. And so in June, that's when we connected with colleagues, including Amelia and Kirsten Delegard from Mapping Prejudice. So Mapping Prejudice is a team that is based in the University of Minnesota libraries, and their work involves identifying and mapping racial covenants, which are clauses that were inserted into property deeds to keep people who are not white from buying or occupying homes. And so as we were talking, I asked Kirsten, who is Mapping Prejudice's project director, do you think that we could use the Mapping Prejudice model of crowdsourcing to help save national park signs? We were both really excited about this idea. We talked with Molly and with Amelia. We pulled in other librarians and public historians and data experts here in the libraries. We brainstormed options, kind of weighed different pros and cons of different tools or methods that we could use. And what we eventually settled on was creating a photo submission form that the public could use in a tool called Qualtrics, and that would be how we would collect photographs of national park signs. So then at the end of June, Molly and I attended the American Library Association conference, which that year happened to be in Philadelphia. And while we were there, we took test photos of the signs at Independence National Historical Park. So again, the one that Molly introduced us to earlier today. And so those photos of Independence were the first photos that we added to the new photo submission form to kind of test it out and make sure everything was working. Then, while our flight was delayed on our way home, we were just hanging out in the Philadelphia International Airport, and we saw a message from the folks at the Data Rescue Project. It turns out that they had also been working on the same idea to try to crowdsource photographs of national park signs. But they had first tried to do it using Wikimedia Commons, but there were some technical issues and it just wasn't working out. So they put out a call asking if anybody wanted to help. So I shared them a link to our Qualtrics submission form. They loved our draft, and we decided to combine forces. So our collaborative team was formed. Us at the University of Minnesota, we kind of provided the photo submission form and the data collection infrastructure. And then the Data Rescue Project folks brought a pre-existing national network of people who are trying to preserve at-risk government information. And they also came with the best project title ever, Save Our Signs, or SOS. And so a big thanks to our colleague Lena Bowman from the Data Rescue Project for that great title idea. So now that we had all of the pieces, we needed to move quickly. We launched Save Our Signs on July 3rd, right in time for the July 4th weekend. And this was really deliberate. We wanted to be fast to take advantage of the long weekend when people would be traveling and to capitalize on this idea of celebrating all American history. That's kind of the tagline that we used when we first launched it. So now I'll share some of the details of how we built this photo archive. The first challenge was setting up the data collection. Setting up the submission form in the beginning, it really required a lot of technical decisions to be made on a really short time frame. In order for the data to be structured in a way that it could be kind of reused and shared for the public in the future, we needed to make sure that we had a standard list of park locations for people to indicate where their photo submissions were coming from. So this big challenge was, and continues to be, what exactly should be in this standardized list of national park sites? So to figure out what to put on the standardized list, we needed to know how many National Park Service sites are there. The thing is that it's actually a really hard question to answer. So many times people will say that there are 63 national parks, which is correct, but the National Park Service also includes other sites such as national battlefields, national historic sites, and more. So the NPS website says that there are 433 sites, or what they're calling the National Park Service units. We almost went with that number, but there are also 150 related areas on the NPS website. And there are some other complications that I'll illustrate for you in just a moment. So what we ended up doing is that the Save Our Signs team decided to go with 482 sites. But this number has changed over the last few months as we have kind of learned more as we've been working through this process. So let's talk about that. So as we looked into the structure of the National Park Service, we quickly realized it was a lot more complicated than we had first thought. One colleague kind of explained it to us like this, that the national parks are like Dairy Queen franchises. So if you'll indulge us in a short little tangent here, this is a question that we have used in undergraduate history classes when we're kind of explaining this issue. So we ask the class, what does the National Park Service and Dairy Queen have in common? And then we give them a little time to think and see what they come up with. And then we shared this image. It's a little bit silly and fun, but the goal is to explain that the national parks function similarly to a franchise like Dairy Queen. They're all affiliated, and each site has a lot in common with each other, but they're also relatively independent from one another. And in fact, each NPS site was created by its own unique congressional mandate. So not only is there not a single central place where all of the content of the signs is collected and preserved, there also isn't one single way to define what counts as a park. So here's a few examples of why it can be super tricky to pin down an exact number of parks. So on this map that you're seeing right now, each black dot represents an area administered by the Park Service. So how many sites would you say that this is? This is actually a map of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park. It is one single individual unit according to the NPS, and it has one administrative code and just one website. Even though, as you can see in the map, it has 3 different dots. Okay, here's the second map. How many sites do you think this one is? So this is actually a map of Colonial National Historical Park. Depending on how you count, it's one individual unit, but it could also be considered up to 4 units. It has 4 different administrative codes and multiple websites. Cape Henry Memorial, which is the dot in the lower right corner of the image, excuse me, is on land that's not actually owned by the NPS. It's on a military reservation, and so you need a real ID and a shuttle if you want to get there. Cape Henry has a different administrative code and a different website from the Colonial National Historical Park, but its website also says that it is part of the Colonial National Historical Park. So the exact number of sites is complicated. So what should be on our list? Optimally, our list would just be the sites that are under the jurisdiction of NPS and those that are open to the public and actually contain educational interpretive signs. But we didn't have a lot of time to put our submission form together, and we didn't really know exactly what lists of locations the federal government was using for their so-called review of these signs. So lacking the perfect list, we decided to go with a list that can be easily shared with our potential contributors. And so it's mostly based on the Find a Park page, which is on the NPS website. We modified it slightly with the goal of using a map as a finding aid for images, and you'll kind of see images of that map later in this presentation. And then we also ended up adding a few sites as requested or as odd situations came up over time. So we've also relied on the local knowledge of folks emailing us to say, hey, I live by this park. This unit is also managed by NPS and it needs to be included. So that's also been really helpful. So now let's talk about how the public can submit their photos to the archive. The primary method that we use for collecting photos is through a Qualtrics survey. And so there's some screenshots here of what that looks like. We ask contributors to upload their photo, grant permission to share it into the public domain, and then provide a few additional pieces of information about the sign. They're required to select the park name from that standardized list, and then include the date that the photo was taken. If motivated, they can also provide the title and notes about the location of the sign within the park. We also quickly found out that some interested folks had really big collections of images, either a really comprehensive set from one site, or that they had collected photos from many sites over years of travel. So to make it easier for them, we created an alternate path for contribution. Folks can request a bulk upload folder and then upload all their photos to a Google Drive folder and then fill out a spreadsheet that has all the information that we need about the photos. We've also created a website that has links to the photo submission form and background information about what's going on and why this is happening, and that is at saveoursigns.org. And then the website also has a section called Where Do We Still Need Photos? So that way, as photos are sent to us, we can update this map and the spreadsheet that kind of together show where photos have already been collected and then where we still need more photos from. So now I will pass things back to Molly to talk about how we spread the word about this effort.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, so our next challenge, of course, is we are a group. We did have, of course, national collaborators from the Data Rescue Project, but we are all primarily situated right here at the University of Minnesota, and national park sites are all across the country. So we needed to figure out a way to spread the word very, very quickly. We had this September 17th, the deadline looming of when we knew quote unquote inappropriate signs needed to be reported. So we needed to really quickly spread the word all across the country. So as soon as we had the website and the survey crafted, which Jenny outlined, we did this in just a matter of days, working overtime for about a week. Our next challenge was just how do we get people to actually use this? And how do we reach visitors all across the country? So this was where our partnership with the Data Rescue Project, which had a really wonderful national, even global reach, was really awesome. So we teamed up with them, and the Data Rescue Project used their existing Blue Sky account and mailing platforms to share our project very widely. And this brought almost immediately a media attention to our project. So our first interview was published in 404 Media. That is a publication, if you're not familiar with it, that focuses on internet and technology news. The Data Rescue Project had an existing relationship with that group, and they were immediately very interested in hearing what we were doing. And they interviewed Jenny and learned more. Later that same week, Kirsten and Jenny were interviewed by the Minnesota Star Tribune. And I, that very same week, went on a environmentalism nature podcast called The Wild Line. So this was all kind of just in the first few days after we launched our archive. We were now on these three platforms able to spread the word. As I will talk about more in detail in a few minutes, on July 22nd, the New York Times published a long form piece about what was happening at national parks. And after somebody helpfully tipped them off about our project, we were added, I believe, to paragraph 7 of that story. And once that happened, interest in our project, of course, skyrocketed once we were on a national platform like the New York Times. And over the next 13 weeks, are so grateful that we had no fewer than 44 news articles featuring Save Our Signs from all across the country. This included local journalists who were able to talk specifically about signs in their area. One particularly awesome journalist I talked to was from the Kansas Reflector, and he did a very nice job talking about the specific history of the sites in Kansas, which include the Brown v. Board Education National Monument and Nicodemus, which is the oldest Black settlement west of the Mississippi. After he wrote about the project and wrote about how important those sites are, we got photo submissions from those sites. I'll also just add it was wonderful getting media coverage from all different kinds of outlets, from environmentalist outlets, from art outlets. This allowed us to reach people with a really wide range of interests in the parks. And I'm sharing here just a few quotes from some of the folks that covered us. And I'm going to take a second to read one of my favorite, which is from the Austin Chronicle. Michael King of the Austin Chronicle writes, if we are to survive the mandated dark ages imposed by the Trumps, official eraser heads, it may well be the librarians who save us. All right, I want to take a second now to talk about one particular sign that is especially important. And this is that sign that the New York Times wrote about on July 22nd, and it is located in Muir Woods National Park, which for those of you who are familiar or not familiar, is located just north of San Francisco. This is the first conformed national park sign that has been censored, or that was censored. So you can see on the screen here, on the left, you can see this sign as it appeared between about 2021 and prior to July 22nd when it was censored. And then on the right, you can see that portions of the sign were removed. In particular, the portions that were removed are yellow boxes that look like Post-it notes, along with a sign that reads History Under Construction. So the censorship of this particular sign erased years of research and dialogue between park rangers and members of the public that were intended to tell a more complete story of the history of Muir Woods. So I want to talk a little bit more about how this sign was made. So in the year 2018, a group of park rangers set about revising this original sign, which provided a timeline of US conservationism in general and specifically of Muir Woods. And when they set about revising it, they noted that none of the dates or information on the original sign were wrong, but they didn't tell the full story. So through further research and in conversation with park visitors, you can see there in the slide, they put up a marker board as they were working on this slide, and they invited visitors to the park to share their thoughts as well. The rangers set about identifying important stories that were absent from the original timeline. These stories included stories about Indigenous stewardship of the land. It included stories of women conservationists that were very central to preserving the site but had not been acknowledged. And it also talked about the legacy of some of the major US conservationists and park founders also had racist and eugenicist beliefs, and that was part of their worldview and shaped how they viewed conservation. So the Rangers added parts of those stories. And in 2021, the Rangers updated the timeline and they added that poster I alluded to that's read, Alert, History Under Construction. And then they added those yellow boxes with this additional information to the timeline. But again, as the New York Times and others reported on July 22nd, these portions of the sign were removed, which effectively reverted the sign back to its pre-2021 version. Elizabeth Filano wrote a fabulous piece about this censorship in Medium. Filano is a park ranger who worked on this project, and she explained, quote, "Rangers are the nation's history keepers, its storytellers, and our job is to tell an unbiased, complete version of history. We tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between." And then in the next slide here, I just have an image of that New York Times article that came out on July 22nd. And as I mentioned, not only did this article spark a lot more media attention in our project, but it sparked hundreds of contributions from around the country. People read this article and realized that they either had pictures of national park sites or were able to visit national park sites and submit photos. And by the end of this summer, we were quickly approaching 10,000 photo submissions. So we got people to participate in our project and to submit photos. So now we had a new challenge, which is how do we put together a public archive to allow people to look at the photographs we collected? So that is what I am going to talk about next. All right, so in September, again, we were very aware of that September 17th deadline for reporting signs. And so we had promised to release the public archive in mid-October. In September, we put out a call here at the University of Minnesota to our library colleagues. And we ended up getting 30 volunteers from all across the library to help us curate the photos that we had collected. So what do I mean by curate? So what these volunteers did is they went through each and every photograph submitted. They made sure that it was legible, that you could read what was on the sign. They made sure that these signs were in fact from national park sites. Jenny did a really nice job talking a bit about the complications of figuring out what's a national park sign. We got sub-submissions from state parks and from maybe designated historic sites that weren't under NPS jurisdiction that we then had to go through and be like, okay, this is really good, but this doesn't fit in our archive. The volunteers also made sure that there were no visible people in the photos. Something that was extremely important to us throughout this process is that we allow people to maintain their anonymity while participating. So we settled on that Qualtrics form because it was one of the few ways we could get people to submit photos where they didn't have to share an email address or any identifying information about themselves. So we also wanted to make sure we were protecting people's privacy when we released the archive. And finally, they were just kind of making sure the photos were in the right place, tied to the right park. Amazingly, in just 1 week, over the course of 3 volunteer sessions, we were all able collectively to curate over 10,000 photographs. And we are so grateful to everyone who volunteered. So this allowed us on October 13th to launch our public archive. You can visit this today. It is publicly accessible and it is organized by park. So here on the next slide, I just have an example of all the pictures we have collected from Acadia National Park, which is sadly another site that has been targeted with censorship. There have been signs removed from that site. But you can go to our website, select Acadia National Park, and see all the signs that have been submitted there. As of today, I'm so proud to share that we have over 12,000 photo submissions, just showing a brief sampling on there. And these photo submissions include photos taken at 382 of the 482 national park sites. So all of this work was possible because we're here at the University of Minnesota Libraries, and the University of Minnesota Libraries is home to so many people with different kinds of expertise that really made this project possible. So first of all, our library is part of the Federal Depository Library Program. So Jenny, as our government publications librarian, works with that program. And what that means is we are one of the libraries in the country where federal government documents are stored. And the region that the University of Minnesota represents is one of the largest regions in the country. So Jenny and her colleagues bring a great deal of expertise about government publications and government information. Of course, national park signs are one form of government information. In addition to that, the University of Minnesota is becoming known throughout the country as a quote unquote spatial university. We have a lot of colleagues here at the library that have a lot of mapping and data expertise, and they were able to help us build the interactive, the map where you can kind of see the dots light up when we have photos that we shared on the last slide. And then third, as we mentioned previously, the University of Minnesota Libraries is home to Mapping Prejudice, where Amelia and other colleagues of ours work. And this is a nationally recognized co-creative crowdsourced history project. So we were able to draw on their expertise to create another co-creative crowdsourced history project in the form of Save Our Signs. So in short, the University of Minnesota Libraries was just sort of perfectly positioned to respond to this particular form of government censorship in the moment that it arose. So after releasing the archive, we got some additional media coverage. We stressed to people that we really wanted to invite people to use the archive in any way they see fit. All of the photos are in the public domain. We asked people to release them into the public domain when they submitted them. So we invite people to make art projects and interactive databases, use their expertise to do what they will with the photographs. Scooty Nickerson, who is a reporter at the Boston Globe, published a wonderful piece about our project just a couple weeks after we released the archive, and he in fact created a searchable database to help readers in Massachusetts find parks there and be able to connect those dots. So the really good news here is that we got a lot of increased visibility for the project after we released this archive. The bad news is that some of this increased visibility came about because signs are continuing to be censored. And so I am going to turn things over to Jenny to talk a little bit more about some of the erasures that have occurred since that first sign in Muir Woods was targeted on July 22nd.
Yeah, so I'll talk about and show some pictures of signs that we know have been erased already, and then also a little bit about what we know is to come. So as Molly explained, the very first documented sign alteration was in July at Muir Woods in California. Then on September 20th, the Washington Post reported that 10 signs at Acadia National Park in Maine had been removed. Some of these signs referenced climate change or sea level rise, storm surge, extreme rain, and encouraged visitors to take a shuttle bus to minimize their carbon footprint. Other signs explained the cultural and spiritual significance of Cadillac Mountain for the Wabanaki people. And so this picture is of 3 of the signs of those 10 that have been removed. The Washington Post also reported in September that a display at Jamaica Bay Wildlife Refuge, which is part of the Gateway National Recreation Area in New York City, was removed because it talked about historical events like slavery, Japanese internment camps, and conflicts with Native Americans when it was describing the history of the park system. Then in January, just in the last few weeks, we've seen a huge increase in sign removals. The New York Times recently reported that after the National Park Service kind of missed that original September 17th deadline, that some things were removed, but not that many signs yet. The Trump administration has actually set a new target date of January 16th, which we're once again past, for a number of parks. And so that kind of tracks with what we have been seeing happening over the last few weeks. So at Fort Sumter and Fort Moultrie National Historical Park, which is located in South Carolina, at least 4 signs have been removed there. 3 of them are these signs that you can see here in the photos. They are at water bottle filling stations, and you can see in the second photo that was submitted to Save Our Signs, those small signs at each water bottle filling station are now gone. And the 4th sign that was removed at this park is about climate change. So again, we have before and after photos that were submitted to the SOS archive. On January 22nd, most of the interpretive panels at the President's House site at Independence National Historical Park in Philadelphia, which we've talked a lot about during this presentation, most of the panels were removed. This one was especially hard for me personally, because we have all just learned so much about the history of the creation of this site, from talking with the folks at the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition, and also because I took the first photos for the SOS archive at this site, back at that conference in Philadelphia. It was so powerful and moving for me to stand at this site and read about this painful history right where it actually happened. And so to me, this site really feels like the beginning of the project. And now these panels are gone. There are videos of them being ripped off the walls with crowbars. And these photos are from the Washington Post and the Philadelphia Inquirer. And these photos are from the Philly Inquirer and the New York Times. It really hurts to see these blank walls. And I'd like to share this really great quote from Eric Thomas of the Kansas Reflector that Molly had mentioned earlier. He wrote that really good article about why these educational materials are so important to have at these actual sites of where they happened. Eric says, quote, "Those same locations would stand mute without context, without the uncomfortable history It's just a schoolhouse in Topeka, or an ambitious town on the plains called Nicodemus, or a pretty prairie of wildflowers. Muir Woods has been impacted again in January as well. A second educational sign was removed from Muir Woods, and this time it describes protecting redwoods. So you can see the before photo is from our SOS archive, and then the after photo is from the New York Times showing the empty plaque where the sign used to be. The Washington Post also reported numerous other signs that have been removed in January, but we don't have photos for those yet. I'm hoping somebody has them in their old photo reels. First, at the Grand Canyon National Park in Arizona, part of an exhibit in the visitor center was removed, and it reportedly includes text stating that settlers exploited land for mining and grazing, and that federal officials pushed tribes off their land to establish the park. At Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming, at least one panel was removed in January as well. It's reported that that sign included details of how an explorer depicted in the visitor center participated in and bragged about a massacre of Native Americans. At Glacier National Park in Montana, we've read that in January, officials removed descriptions of how climate change is contributing to glacial loss. And then finally, the Washington Post has also reported that a number of signs at other locations have been ordered to be removed. We don't know yet if they have been confirmed to be removed. And so these are at Big Bend National Park, Fence Old Fort National Historic Site, the Hubble Trading Post National Historic Site, Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, Little Bighorn Battlefield, and Sunset Crater Volcano National Monument. So there's a lot going on, and it's really hard to keep track of what has been removed where and how widespread exactly this problem is, and what's been actually removed versus what is at risk of removal. So to help us address this question, we have started what we're calling the SOS removal tracker on our website. Basically, it's a spreadsheet where we're trying to keep track of officially confirmed removals, either that we learn through reputable news sources or where we receive before and after photographic evidence directly in the Save Our Signs submission form. So this is a publicly accessible spreadsheet that anybody can use, and it also includes links to before and after photos when we have them. So now I'll pass things back to Amelia.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. So the work of Save Our Signs is remembering our history and scientific knowledge. So that's what we are doing. And we're doing this because creating today's exhibits didn't come easily or without thought. This is what Molly enumerated through all of the community responses and advocacy that from all the different sites that she had talked about, and what we've been seeing through the images of these sites. It's taken decades of work by historians, scientists, uh, indigenous nations, and local communities to make this park interpretation more inclusive, showing the nuance and complexity of our relationship to this land and our shared history of our country. And as librarians and public historians, it is our job to create and preserve materials that document the truth for current and future generations. And we need your help to do this. As Jenny outlined, each day we hear news of new erasures. And these interpretive materials are disappearing before our very eyes. So I want to read a quote from one of our photo curation volunteers who said, quote, "Getting rid of the signs is more than just getting rid of DEI language or diversity, equity, and inclusion language, and even the history of these sites. It's getting rid of the memories of these sites that people who have gone to these sites have, and who have then applied the learnings of these histories to their lives." And as our colleague Chandra Manning, who is a part of the Citizen Historians Project, which is a sister project trying to document and save exhibits at the Smithsonian Institution, says, she says, quote, "If it is possible to edit stories, experiences, people, and whole groups out of the past, it becomes that much easier to edit or erase them from the present or even the future." So we need your help in preserving the histories and experiences that are held in our national parks. And so I urge you to visit our parks and take photos so that we can hopefully capture these stories before it is too late. And I want to be clear, our public archive of NPS sites can never replace the educational displays that have been removed from a historically significant place, because the land itself carries the meaning. But a photograph can help us remember what used to be there, why it was important, and what we have lost. And so we hope that the Save Our Signs archive serves as a means for memorializing the collective work behind each panel and preserving the community voices that have come together to create these exhibits. And in fact, it's the community members' responses and their voices to this ongoing erasure that sustains our hope. It's what fuels us. So these are this is a photo of some creative artistic responses that community members have created. They have painted signs for Acadia National Park that's drawing attention to the signs that were removed there. And there are other responses, such as the ways that Philadelphians have responded to the President's House erasure here. This is a photo of the empty panels, and community members had pasted colorful papers that say, "History is real," and "Learn all history." And early on in the project, the Save Our Signs team actually received 30 plus handwritten postcards from a group called the Postcard Underground. And as we were reading these notes and just love letters, essentially from the public, we cried, and we were just very emotionally moved by them. And so I want to quote a few. There's the first one here, which says, "I love that you are true librarian superheroes." And the second one that says, "Thank you for including the public in pushing back against revisionist regulations." And this last one, which talks about, quote, "In this extraordinarily challenging political space and season, thank you for your courage and action. Each act of courage brings hope and engagement from people like me. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And so now I'm going to pass it on to Molly, who's going to wrap us up and tell us what we have coming next.
Thank you, Amelia. So, yeah, our work here is not done. Sadly, it's not done because signs continue to be erased. And it's also not done because we know there are signs out there that we still don't have photographs of, and we would love to have them. So just the first thing I want to emphasize is that we are continuing to accept photographs. We still need some quote unquote regular photos of signs that we just haven't captured yet that share important historical and scientific knowledge that we would love to have added to our archive. And then we now have this new need as signs are being censored and coming down. If you see a photo of a sign that you believe has been censored, we want a photo of it. That helps us track what's going on. We also want a photo of a place where a sign was that has been taken down. Like you saw that picture in Philly of where those panels about slavery were taken down. You could see the blank spots there. We want to document that. We also welcome photographs of protest art, other creative reactions, as you saw in the photos that someone submitted to us from Acadia, where a group of artists came out and said, "Hey, we're gonna make this community response to what's happened here." We would love photographs of those signs as well. We want help both documenting the erasure and then also documenting how people are getting together and responding. Um, we are looking forward to publishing a part 2 of the archive in early 2026. We are still there. There are about 200 some photos that we have collected since we released the original archive that we want to add to our collection. And we, not me personally, but some talented colleagues of mine are also hard at work building a new and improved database with some improved search features that we hope to go out soon later this year. So coming up next, we'll of course need to curate those round of photos that have been submitted, and then we look forward to adding them to our archive. The other thing I just want to stress is that we have been working. One wonderful thing about this project is we have met with wonderful concerned individuals and organizations from across the country that have told us, we really want to help you track what's happening on the ground. Like we know that you in Minnesota cannot track everything. And so we've been in conversation with people that are close to a site and they want to keep an eye on it and submit photographs. So we are, thank you. Um, so we are continuing to just be in conversation with people and to figure out how we can collect additional photographs. With that, this is not how I plan to end the conversation. I am currently working from home today, but it sounds like the library exit has gone off in the library where Amelia and Jenny are. So I'm very grateful I chose to do a work from home day today, and I'm happy to do the best I can solo with any questions that you may have. And it looks like Jenny is going to try to join from outside the library in a minute as well. I'll pass it over to you. That's probably one of the most unusual conclusions to a Tuesday with a Scholar.
I kind of knew that things have been happening at the U2, and that can definitely, it speaks to the time and why this is an important thing that we need to be doing. So, okay, let's go. We've got like 14 or so, 15 comments or questions. Um, and one thing I'm hoping that maybe you can share in this will go into chat that everyone could go to is the link for the site. Because I know what I type in, but I'm like, what do you type in to get to your site or recommend to people? If you could put that in the chat, a lot of people are
Absolutely.
asking, will these sites and URLs be emailed to us? Most of these are in on the site itself, aren't they?
They are. So thank you so much for that question. I am sharing right now the general website where you can go to. It'll also work. We have the domain name saveoursigns.com. So if you just type in saveoursigns.com to your browser, you can get to our main webpage. And then I will also share a direct link to our archive. Our archive is linked to on our website, but I'll give you a direct link right
Okay.
here. And those are the two I most want to highlight. But if there's anything else, anyone from our website, you can also see where to submit photos. I'll provide that link as well.
Okay, I just translated that to everyone because you sent it to the host and panelists, so I had
Oh,
to.
thank you so much.
I did
I
the
just realized,
save.
let me see. Oh, yes, I do have an everyone option. Okay, here's submit your photos. Thank you so much, Kay.
Okay, I did the Save Our Science website.
Okay.
Okay. So those are in chat, everyone. Go over there, click on those so it opens up in your browsers and you have those and then like favorite them, save those for yourself, okay? So that's one thing taken care of. Okay, so done with that one. Okay, has the Trump administration resisted your efforts in any way?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I'm happy to the report. Oh, good. And I think Jenny might be joining me outside for this. Jenny, welcome. We were just asked if the Trump administration has resisted our efforts in any way. Um, and I'm trying to think. I think that the best thing about this, we have not gotten any like direct pushback. Um, One thing that has been really satisfying for us, and I know we've been in conversation with Avenging the Ancestors who I've talked about, and one of the things they've talked about is like this doesn't quite answer your question, but just that by calling attention to this problem, we hope that we've been able to slow things down a little bit. We're not sure if that's the case or not, but we at least have been able to get lots of eyes on this problem. So far we haven't heard a direct response to us here at the library. But every day something new could happen.
No. Okay, someone's wondering, is it reasonable to hope this history may be fully restored under a future administration, or should we expect some data will be lost forever?
Great question. I know Jenny and I grapple with this question with not only the science, but with other information that has been taken off of government websites, including data. Um, Jenny, do you want to take this one? Otherwise, I'm happy to. I
Jenny
realize you
just
may not be
froze
able
up,
to.
I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I think the thing, I guess the way I would answer that question is that I'm not sure. I want to be optimistic and hope that absolutely, like now that we're capturing what's happened, as Jenny mentioned, it's really important to all of us here at this program that the national park signs are actually in the national parks, right? So you can have that experience of being visiting a park and understanding the history that happened there. So we hope that by capturing this, this will help perhaps individuals under a future administration to be able to put the signs back up. But I guess the short answer is simply that we don't know. And that's one of the reasons why we really wanted to preserve the signs or photographs of the signs as they are.
Okay. Um, let's see. I've had a bunch of new questions come in, so I'm quickly scanning this. A lot are asking, are there any sites in or near Minnesota that haven't been, or that you still need signage, or do you need checking on um, to see if signage has been removed? I'm taking it Wisconsin, Minnesota, possibly Iowa, North and South Dakota.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Can I try one more time? Are you able to hear me this time?
yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So sorry about that, everybody. I'm not sure what's going on, but looks like everybody made it out of the building safely, so that's good. Anyway, um, yeah, so definitely take a look at the map. I know that, for example, we have a few photos for like there's sort of different like waterways. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but I think there's like a Mississippi one and a St. Croix one. Um, and those are a little bit tricky to tell whether or not we have all the photos for them or not. So, for example, the Mississippi site has like at least one kind of area, like visitor center type place where there are a number of signs, and we do have photos of that. However, because the site is so dispersed and long, it's hard to know if we've gotten, especially all of the outside kind of wayside type signs that are along the trails. And so any assistance, like if it's a nice day out, a little tricky in Minnesota right now, but you know, ski along the trail or whatever makes sense for you and just take photos of any wayside signs that you might see, especially would be really helpful. But yeah, we do try to keep that map on our website up to date.
Okay. And we did share the website in chat with everyone so that they can click on those.
Great.
Um, and that's somebody asked how to access the database. Go to the website. So,
Yeah.
okay. Let's see. Oh, somebody had asked if where is that one? I know you're librarians, but do you have all your data double and triple backed up in case anyone attempts to sabotage your work?
Yes. I'm going to go inside, so I'll let Molly finish this answer, but I will just say yes, thank you so much for thinking of that. And absolutely, we've got the archivists on it. So,
Yeah, I think the thing I would add to that is just this is another reason why librarians I think are really well, like you said, like I know you're librarians. I myself am not an expert at secure data storage, but I have colleagues that are, right? We have archivists, we have a really fabulous team here. And as I spoke a little bit to, and Jenny spoke a bit to, we were constantly thinking about privacy and security when setting up this archive and making sure that everything we have is backed up, that we're collecting everything in a secure way. And that's something we're constantly talking about and reevaluating. So yes, thank you so much for thinking of that. I think it's something that especially when things are, I think sometimes when you're talking about digital materials, people don't always stop to think about preservation, which is especially important with materials that can sometimes be more ephemeral, like digital materials. So the good answer is yes. Our archive is very secure.
Okay, this is an interesting one because of people, as often you do, you'll spot folks on major road trips stop to use the bathroom and they see, or there's that historic sign there. Who handles the historic signs at wayside rests or
Yeah.
rest areas in, on the freeways? Is that the state or is that, or,
Yeah, so I will tell you right now, I have done my answer is I don't know, and I apologize, but I have done a crash course in the last few months and just learning about how signs are made. And I am going to go back for things within the NPS. I'm going to go back to that Dairy Queen analogy. Each site, and for NPS sites, handles things a little bit differently. And each site kind of has their own story of how they've worked with the local community to create that sign. But each site kind of functions and is governed a little bit differently. The other thing I can say, since you asked about wayside stops, um, one thing that's been super confusing is there's like national park sites, and then there are some national historic markers that are not park sites. And there are some signs that are governed, like there's it kind of by both national historic sites and national parks. Jenny has more expertise in this as the government docs librarian. But I guess my answer is often it depends. And sometimes you have multiple groups working together to make these signs, and sometimes it's one person. And again, I guess I'm just going to keep going back to Dairy Queens and the analogy of a franchise. It really depends site by site, which is one reason why saving these signs is so complicated. There isn't like one centralized repository where it's like, this is the committee that decides what it's going to say. I think that's a good thing because it allows for more local voices and local expertise to come out in a lot of situations, right? Um, but it also means the answer is it's complicated and it depends.
yeah. I would think if you see a historic sign and it contains things that could potentially have it be removed, whether it be by the federal government or a state government, take a picture. Save it until you find out that maybe you need to upload that. But it's like, it doesn't hurt to take a picture and then see if a sign ever gets altered. So, when in doubt, take a photo. So, um, okay, that was someone can't find what we just put in chat. Um, Grayson, look into that. Someone can't find what we put in chat. Okay, wow, there's so many. Oh, they just found it. Okay. Could there be a legal challenge requiring the Interior Department to preserve the signs they remove?
Yeah, should I try to take that one? Molly, thank you
The answer
for
is yes, and I'll let
sharing.
Jenny take it.
Yeah, yeah, so there already have been some legal cases. So right now, the Avenging the Ancestors Coalition has been working on legal action in Philadelphia to address the removal of the panels at Independence at the President's House site. And I want to say on Friday is when they had some sort of actual hearing or something. I don't know the legal terms for it. But I know that they're pushing back against that, in particular because of some of the complications in how the parks are related to other things, like Molly was mentioning earlier. So in Philadelphia, the Independence National Park actually is kind of was co-created or something to do with the city of Philadelphia itself. And so they actually have a measure of authority over the park as well as the NPS does. And so because of that, I think that's part of the lawsuit that that the city was not consulted, and that the city was supposed to be for any changes that were to happen at that site. So yes, there are legal actions that can be taken, especially in cases like that where there are co-management. Um, and I expect that there will be more. We do see, over the last many months that the Trump administration frequently ends up in legal cases, and they often lose those cases when it's shown that the action that they took was not allowed. And so maybe that will happen in a case such as this, but we really don't know yet. We'll have to kind of wait and see.
And Molly just put a link in there that refers to that on chat if you want to see that. Okay, if the federal government puts pressure on the University of Minnesota to destroy this archive by threatening to withhold funding, etc., as they have at several Eastern universities, is your work backed up to at a nonprofit site or so that you can't be controlled or intimidated? Which we kind of discussed a little bit that you do have backups and they're not going to intimidate us. We're Minnesotans. Okay, no. I mean, they're trying, but what do
Yes,
you
they
feel?
are. Yeah, yeah. So, while many of us on the team do work at the University of Minnesota, technically this is not a University of Minnesota project. It's not funded by the University of Minnesota. The archive is not held on a University of Minnesota storage, although some backups are because that makes sense that in our libraries we would have archives of things. And like our website is on a university instance of a Google website. But we also partner with the Data Rescue Project, and they also have backups as well. And so, yeah, we're good to go if the university were suddenly to decide that they can't have this affiliated with them. It's not affiliated, but there are lots of backups available.
Okay. Are people able to, I know you kind of mentioned using the photos, I think, so people are able to download those they could use on a park visit to double check and see if signage is removed.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Yep.
so yeah, so that's a task for everyone. If you know you're going somewhere, look and see if there's signage photos, take them with. Or if you have family near any of these, relatives, friends, have them do that. That's something, a way that we can help by just reaching out and networking on part of this. So, okay, let's see next. Um, do we know of any signs that have been removed that have been secretly saved?
What a
Like,
good
yes.
question. Um, I believe, was it the New York Times or some article recently said that the ones from Independence are at the Constitution Center, the National Constitution Center right now?
I think so. I just read that like this morning in the New York Times, so I hope I'm not misremembering. But it
I
sounds
think
like they
that's
did
correct.
take some of the panels. Yeah, yes.
But I don't
So,
know. I don't know who has custody of them. Yeah, we don't really know.
yeah, and if it's done in secret, you shouldn't know. So if they're holding on to them, but hopefully they are doing that. So when you get photos from people, are you checking to see if the photo metadata contains geotagging or geolocation info?
Yeah, great questions. So, yes, oftentimes they do. However, we remove the all of that data before we post them to the publicly accessible website. What we do instead is just copy the latitude and longitude of the individual photographs if it's included, which it isn't always, and then strip away all the rest of the metadata, and then the latitude and longitude is only kept if it is within the bounds of a park. Because sometimes the metadata is wrong, right? Like depending on if you take a picture with your phone or with a camera, what if you just like never set the date time zone on your camera or different things like that? Oftentimes the metadata will be incorrect, and so we're only keeping if it seems to be an accurate representation of where a sign was located in a park. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, I submitted my photos at home on my computer. That's just fine. It won't include that data, and even if it did, it will be removed before it is published into the publicly accessible database.
Okay. Someone's going, how does one determine the veracity of the removed or persisting signs? And I would say, if you know you're going to the park, go and see if there's photos in the file and compare. That's probably one of the best ways to do that at this point. Do you guys have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing. And especially if it's a park that you've been to many times before, that you live nearby, you might be the local expert on your park. And so you can kind of be the eyes on the ground, go and see what's changed, if anything. You can look at the photos that we have in the archive now, and see if you can find those same signs, or if not, or if you see a blank sign, maybe you can match it based on the scenery around it. Um, and yeah, and also on our tracker, we are only including examples of confirmed signs by, reputable news sources like the New York Times or the Washington Post. But then also, if there's a before and after photo, that's a really clear indication, then we'll include those as well.
Okay, someone's wondering, have you seen any instances of vandalism um, by inspired individuals who may be ardent Trump supporters before signs are taken down?
Hmm.
I actually don't
But
know that we have. Have we, Jenny or
Hmm.
Amelia?
I don't think so.
Which isn't to
so,
say that's not happening. And if you see it, take a picture.
Yeah.
That's kind of part of the whole like capturing what's happening at this moment in the public response. But it didn't come up when we did the photo curation day. I don't believe so.
are you aware of any states who might be following Trump's lead? Is there a similar project for any state historic site signs that you've heard of, inspired by you guys, or?
That's a great question. And I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. I haven't heard of it happening yet. If folks would like to start up something similar for their local state sites, go for it. We love that. Feel free to use our model. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know of what about other agencies in the Department of Interior, such as the National Forests, which are under the USDA?
Yeah, so exactly as the question said, the USDA is separate from the Department of the Interior, and so the Forest Service is not technically covered by this executive order. However, that might not matter in the long run. There might still be censorship. Um, so we do know that different folks have submitted like FOIA requests to other Department of the Interior agencies to try to understand if any of them are being impacted in quite the same way that the national parks are. To my knowledge, they aren't yet. But if that were to happen, I think that would be another really great project for another team to take on. Again, we would love to share our model and have folks work on that, but we're just one small team, and so we're kind of really focused on our project, which is specifically the national park, since they have been so specifically targeted.
Okay. So this kind of ties into some of the groups that you're working with. How safe are the museums, et cetera, on the mall in DC? Are they part of this erasure also?
So I am going to throw a link in the chat right now. I alluded to the group Citizen Historians, and I want to share their website as well. And this actually piggybacks perfectly with what Jenny was saying about sister projects. So the citizen historians, we don't have the capacity to take on like everything that's happening in the Smithsonian, but as many of you probably have read, the Smithsonian in particular is really being targeted as well. A lot of the sites on the mall are national monuments, which does fall under the national parks, like the Martin Luther King Memorial. It really depends site by site. So if it's under the NPS, anything in the mall, we're taking pictures of it, we're capturing it. For things that are at the Smithsonian Museum, this team based out of DC, um, more able to do it than we are encouraging people. They're also organizing volunteers to take pictures of Smithsonian exhibits and preserving photographs of them. And so I just threw that link in the chat if you want to learn more about what they're doing and how you can support them.
So, okay, 5 minutes left. So if you have any more questions, um, please ask. I'll just read a few who are just saying, hey, you should all feel well-deserved pride for taking such timely and comprehensive initiative using your unique expertise. Congratulations and thank you. Somebody else says, might we get a transcript of this session? It would be so helpful. Don't think that that's going to happen, but this is being recorded. So you can go back and watch this again. Ollie has a YouTube channel, Ollie at the University of Minnesota, and the Ramsey County Libraries. We put once Grayson gets that up on YouTube, he sends me the link and we put it up on the Ramsey County Library website, then also under um, event video links or library program videos that you can watch. And it's up for like 2 years, so it will be there for a while. So, okay. Also, kudos to all of you who are working on this project. So, let's see. Someone was thinking specifically in terms of the mall about the Native American Museum that opened in the early 90s. And yeah, I mean, that could, well, even the African American Museum that opened, I could see Trump taking it over and deciding it needs a $200 million revamp, just like the Kennedy Center is closing because of that now. We'll see. But everyone's just saying, you guys are wonderful, you're great, all of this. But yeah, just it's one of those things that people just weren't really aware of. And I'm taken back to the Manzanar National Historic Site that you shared. The fact that it was a 10,000 person detainee site. It's not that far removed from current history in terms of detainee sites that are being built, and the fact that our largest one currently is 3,000, and Trump has orders that he'd like some 10,000 ones built again. And it's like, are we repeating history that shouldn't be repeated? Yes. But let's erase, trying to erase that information from us and us not being aware of these things happening. You guys are bringing a lot of awareness, and that's an important thing. Last question. Do you partner in any way with the Alt National Park Service on Facebook? The site bills itself as the official resistance team of the U.S. National Park Service.
Not partnering specifically, but yeah, that's really great that they're doing that. And I'm really bad at social media, so I'm not on there. But
I do know some folks from the DRP, the Data Rescue Project, have like pinged them, tagged them. I'm also not the most up to date on social media person, and I don't believe they've heard back. So if anyone on this call has a connection with Alt National Parks, we'd love to chat with them.
So, okay, someone make it happen. We can do this. So, I do follow them on Facebook, I can see. But, okay, yeah, in terms of like co-managed parks, we have one here in Minnesota, which is Grand Voyager. No, Grand Portage National Monument. And do you
yeah.
know has does it sounds like some co-management doesn't matter if it's co-managed, but sometimes it can. Does that make a difference at all?
Yeah, I think the main way that it makes a difference is that there'll be like an official voice there to try to say, hey, don't change things. But we've seen that happen even when there is an official voice saying you can't change this. So, um, yeah. But I think that everybody should, use whatever power and whatever voice they have to speak up and to say that it's not okay. This erasure is not okay. And so if you have a platform, use it.
So, yeah, and make sure once the video's out, and check and see and share it with people you know about this, because this is how we spread the word and we do preserve that which is trying to be erased. So, um, yeah. national monuments, large forested areas in our Oregon are part of a national monument. Maybe Trump wants to log them now. That's true. Okay, that was a comment in the question section there. And yeah, if you um, do go on the Department of Interior website and see some of the stuff that is happening, it is more than just sign removal. So encourage you to check out their newsletters and see what they're doing there too. So okay, it is now officially 2 o'clock, and it has been a wonderful 90 minutes, even with the excitement of having to abandon the building there for a minute, you guys, or a couple
Thanks for
minutes.
your patience.
But I am so thankful to all of you for coming and sharing your expertise, your passion. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing and continue to do. Um, Everyone, make sure, like I said, spread the news. I will try and when I send a link, I'll update you on if or I'll send an email to let people be aware of or mention that, hey, videos are up, start watching them, start sharing them. So otherwise, everyone, have a safe day. Have enjoy the sunshine. Do things that bring joy to your life and keep fighting the good fight. So, thank you
Thanks so
all.
much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.